and welcome to the Indo GAA pod. Delighted to be joined once again by Pat and Dick, and I'll have to come to you first, Pat. You're fired up this week, Pat, and I'm going to fire you up a bit more. You always talk about the club title that you won with Thomond College, but what I want to know is, how did you not win a Sigerson, and how did it take until 2026 for the University of Limerick to be on the roll of honour for the Sigerson Cup?
You know, that's a very interesting point, because I watched the Sigerson during the week, and the Sigerson matches, I watched a lot of the matches, whatever was live on YouTube or whatever like that. I watched those games, and they were very enjoyable games. One thing I do note about the Sigerson this year, that the quality, the star players weren't really playing this year. That the teams were dominated by panel members of county teams and extended panel members. You know, there was none of the David Cliffords or the Connacht of this world weren't there. Now, that's not to say there weren't enjoyable games or anything like that. And I was watching the Trench Cup on Thursday involving Mayo against Trinity. Because there was the captain of Trinity was Luke Casserly of Sligo, and just had interest in that. And Trinity won it after extra time, a real seesaw battle. But it's a very interesting thing. The commentator said the Trench Cup, which is the second competition, the one underneath, the winners of the Trench Cup, who are Trinity, going to the Sigerson next year, and Trinity won it. But it started in 1975. The first captain was a certain Brian Mullins, Lord have mercy in his soul. And 50 years ago, 1976, the captain of the Trench Cup winning team was a fella called Pat Spillane, right? 50 years ago. And
Pat, just make sure you reference the Clerkin aspect. I was getting in this game too.
In the 1975 team, Mr. Clerkin, Mr. Hugo Clerkin was playing in the 75 team.
True. You didn't know that, Mike, did you?
I didn't. No, I don't.
And there's a useless piece of information then. Right. So we dominated Universities League. So we were Division 1. We won the Division 1 Universities League title, I think, 2 years in a row. I'm 99% certain that for 2 years we were unbeaten in Championship and League. We tried to get into Sigerson. We were rejected. In actual fact, Larry McCarthy in our WhatsApp group posted a copy of the rejection letter from the GAA not allowing the National College of Physical Education to become part of Sigerson.
What was the rationale behind that?
There was two reasons for that. Sigerson in the 70s was exclusively the priority of the universities.
Universities and Queens. So the NUAs and Queens, yeah.
So the regional colleges, for want of a better word, the National College of Physical Education, all of those weren't allowed. In Limerick as well. So the National NIHE in Limerick, NCP in Limerick, all those weren't allowed. Of course, the other reason was we'd have won it. Jesus, we won the All-Ireland Club in 79. So would we have won a Sigerson? Of course we would. So that's the reason why. Now, slight change. I mean, great credit to UL for winning both the league and championship. Now, it is a little bit, they said it was their first league title. Not really. It was the first,
as the University of Limerick?
As the University of Limerick. But no, it wasn't the first by that college. We won the Universities League. So that's why it was a closed shop with the universities at the time, and now thankfully it is open to all the universities and whatever like that. So that's it.
You went about that in a roundabout way, but you got there in the end anyway.
You know, I was a bit cranky coming on today because I said, geez, you know, we weren't on last week. And you know, every week now there's a lot of, you know, there's so many topics in the GAA, even in the week when we're not playing. And I started saying, geez, I'd love to be on last week, but we had no podcast. Although I did, as you appeared on a rival podcast, I think, all right, you know. But so hopefully from now on,
a rival yet under the same house.
So hopefully from now on, we'll be every week and we'll be ranting and raving. So to calm down, you know, I sort of got in the mood this morning and I watched all the sport on television, you know, and there was cycling from UAE. The Ireland-Zimbabwe T20 hasn't started yet because it's rain delayed. I watched a great curling match in the Winter Olympics.
Ah, lads, the controversy, the curling controversy.
Yeah, but
Hilarious. You haven't lived, huh?
Etche has shot Germany this morning now, which was a bit of a surprise. But you know what? I said, Jesus. So this calmed me down. I found the ideal sport on one of my 25 sports channels. Fishing on the bank.
Oh, wow.
It was on for the last hour in TNT. And it was actually the Penn Crouch Open of 2025. And it just basically involved a bunch of fellas standing on a boat, fishing.
And are they talking to each other, or what's the scenario?
They're talking shy to each other. And actually, they gave away the exclusive bit. Like, what's the key to... If you see a lot of birds in the water, it's the key that there are fish underneath. Okay. Oh, Jesus.
You so much time to give. I need to hire you. I could have you in as a motivational coach for some of my clients, man. I could make a fortune out of you. Like you're wasted watching fishing.
Fishing on the bank has calmed me down a bit for this program.
Okay, well, enough of the fishing, enough of the Winter Olympics. We'll get into the meat of what was a very busy weekend again, Dick. What comment I'll throw to you straight away, Dick. Piggery in the middle of the park. I have to say, there is no greater compliment than if you're described as a pig on the pitch, because that means you are a pig for hardship, a pig for work, a pig for ignorance. Give me 10 or 11 pigs on any team and I'll take them. But what did you make of those comments?
Is there a reason you're directing that to me then? Because I suppose that's the way people might have said I played. I thought it was a curious one. Like, I played against Kieran. We played in the era of Piggery, for all intents and purposes. That was the game. Like, the ball went out into the middle and it was, you fought, you had your catchers and you had your breakers and you had the guys on the ground. And like, Kieran wasn't a high fielder. He was like me. He was the break and ball expert. And, you know, you called the game was Piggery. Well, there was no greater hog in the shed than Kieran McGeeney back in the day, no more than myself, because that was the game. Do you know what I mean? That was it. And there was a... Yeah, is it scientific? Is it? He threw a comment out. There's no skill in it. There's tactics. There's ways that you actually coach now. And I'm looking at the game now, and it was in Croke Park again on Saturday night. And I'm looking at kickouts, and I'm looking at decision making by keepers. I'm looking at the positioning of midfielders and breaking ball. And there's so much work has to be done in the new game. It's almost as if the current group of players have never been coached or learned how to play the game that it was in McGeeney's era, in terms of it. Like, when I see Blaine Hughes kicking the ball out to a man standing on the edge of the D to get turned over, like that, like lunacy stuff. Like, and I'm sort of wondering what's been coached now in terms of the decision making, that there's far too much of that happening. That is in the control of the keeper and the coaches to basically instruct keepers where this ball needs to go. And yes, there is an element. The ball just has to go out now, largely 50-50. But when you're the decision maker with the ball, you can still dictate where that ball goes. You can still dictate where your players are set up. And there's an awful lot of room for improvement, I still see. And it's just to sort of say, it's just, I throw it out there and it's 50-50. It's not just like that, because it was never like that in our case, even though the ball was largely, you know, for yourself, Pat, it was Charlie Nelligan just hammered the ball down. But it was going to Jack O'Shea. It was going to Shawnee Walsh. They knew their job was to get up and compete, and the boys knew where to be in around them. I don't see that a lot. I see balls going out to small corner forwards where the midfielder has made a run to the wrong direction and he doesn't know to be under the ball. Or even in Monaghan's cases, Rory Beggan, the longest kick in the game, still not utilising it. He might chip a 50-50 ball out to the edge. Well, that ball should be boomed down to the 65 in the other team.
Is there not an art in that? Is that not an art?
But there is an art in it, but there is a logic to it as well. Like, I always sort of say, you play the odds. You know, when it has to go out and there's an element of chance, we'll at least have it 60-40 in your favour. Because if you're at least doing that, you know, over time you'll benefit. But when you're just sort of throwing it out because it's the last option, because everyone's cheering, because you've been looking for the short kickouts, that's what's happened now. The keeper's looking for these short kickouts that don't really exist anymore because of the full press. And then what he has to do, he says, he's under pressure, he just has to boot it out. Whereas actually, if he's looking for the longer one better to make sure that people are set up, they have a greater chance of success. So I think the kickouts evolving, but there's an awful lot in the gift of the keepers and the teams with the ball to do better than they are at the minute, from what I'm seeing on the outside looking in.
Pat McGeeney is pretty cranky at the minute, to be fair to say.
First of all, just to point out, a pig is also one of the slowest fucking animals around. Just to clarify that, you know. There's no doubt about it. Look, and we talked about it. I was going to say alluded. I'm back in the Sunday game. We alluded to that 2 weeks ago because we talked about the coaches have lost control. Because now, as Dick said, the opposition last year weren't really pressing up. They were still reversing back, retreating. Goalies got the short kick-outs away a lot of the time last year. That's not happening this year because, like I said, there's a full press. The soft option of a short free to number 2 or number 4 is gone. So it's now a lottery because the ball has to go is going long. So do I like it? It's chaotic, but I like it. What do you want? I still think, going back to one of the worst All-Irelands that I watched was the 2024 All-Ireland.
That was the cream, Pat. That was the worst of the worst.
I think it was the worst of the worst. And that day, what was I looking at for long spells that day?
Pigeons or seagulls, was it, or something?
I know the seagull, and we discussed that before because the seagull had realised. I told you that. I Wikipedia to discover that just the smartest bird on the planet, and he was, because he wasn't going to be bothered at all. But so what happened was, the opposition retreated for the kick out. The kick out was dropped short, and you watch the Armagh play. I can still picture them. I used to watch the Armagh players as they ambled up the field, soloing slowly, no one on them, and every now and again, a hand would be raised that there was some premeditated, pre-planned move going to take place, and you'll start to say, I don't want to see this shite again. I want to see that chaos in the middle of the field. But there's no doubt about it. Tactically, coaches haven't got the hang of it yet because, like I said, they're not able to control the controllables. So what you're going to... Dick talks about Rory Beggan. Certainly, you're looking at goalkeepers with long kick-outs as an option. You're certainly going to have to be looking for basketball moves involving screening and blocking runners and stuff like that. The groundhog player, the Paul Galvins, there's not enough of them in the game. And I just think as an easy option, I cannot understand why just the opposition goalie, if there is so much chaos, if there is so much 50-50 ball in the middle of the field, that you just go and kick the ball out over the sideline, because that means you can reset the defence and it's easier to defend against the sideline kick from the opposition than losing a mid. But I was in Portlaoise last Saturday night now watching Laois and Sligo, and Laois just... And it goes back to every game. When you win that battle in the middle third, whether it is winning primary possession, whether it's winning the breaking ball, but when you win that battle in the middle third, and in the weather conditions at present, if you have the wind behind you, and if you have momentum, Jesus, it's almost impossible. Laois dominated the middle third against Sligo. The Sligo forwards, honestly, I swear to God, they lived on crumbs for the entire game. Laois won by 7, but they had about 75% of the possession and should have won by 14. And you look at all those games now, you look at a lot of those games over the weekend, where teams got the momentum, where teams got the dominance in the middle third, and with the win behind them. You saw Roscommon in the first 25 minutes against Armagh. Geez, they got 2-13 in 25 minutes. You saw Louth in the second half against Meath. Galway against Kerry, the last 25 minutes. Galway won that midfield battle. They outscored Kerry 2-9 to 3 points in the last. Even Dublin against Monaghan for the last 15 minutes got a bit of momentum and outscored. So the importance of the kick out, the importance of winning that midfield battle, whether it is primary possession or secondary possession of breaking ball, is so. But I can see the frustration of McGeeney.
Well, one thing, Pat, that he can control, these breaches. They're very controllable. They're so controllable. And Dick, that's kind of unforgivable, really.
He lost the goal. He also conceded a 2-point free.
Yeah.
Sorry, and going back to in the first half when Blaine Hughes was looking for the short kick out and it got intercepted, that's in their control. That should be instructed if it's not immediate, because those short kick outs, if it's not straight away and the team has got a chance to set up, especially when you're playing against a breeze, it makes it even more difficult to get the ball out fast, because remember, the player can't come forward. It should be clear at the meetings before the Saturday night, says, right, Blaine, right, guys, if he doesn't get it out immediately and it isn't at least an 80% chance of success, that kick is not happening. and you need to reset, and you need to position yourselves out the pitch that it's going to the catchers and the breaking ball bit. That's very basic stuff in terms of communicating, because that was like, and I seen that and I said, how he ever thought that was an option to do, because you could actually see that, I can't remember who the Armagh defender was. He was standing on the edge. He couldn't move forward. He had to sort of plant his feet and wait for it to come. And but we've seen so many of those. It happened again against Tyrone and Cavan. We've seen so many instances of that happening. Those short
It's a high wire kind of an act that's unnecessary.
It's
really
crazy. The risk reward just doesn't stack up.
Yeah.
Even if you get it, you're still been pushed up. You still have a man to get past. You can't give it back to the keeper. So your advantage is minimal enough. Yes, you have the ball, but the risk of losing it, well, we've seen it's goals. It's 3 points again.
But surely even those shorter ones should be out towards the sideline, where if it's turned over, there's still a hell of a lot of work to do.
It's fine, and you do see them like going back to Kerry last year in the All-Ireland series. Like, they've done it so well out to the edges, but they were done well. But like, the thing is evolving that teams now are not giving those kicks. They're pushing. You look at Roscommon, they had 4 men up. You're going to see more of that now. Full press. It's not like 2 or 3 men sitting up. It's maybe 4 men knowing that we got to shut this out completely. So like, the goalkeepers need to react to that, and not still be trying to force it through, which we're seeing with very costly effects.
But the difference, like, for example, take Kerry's performance in the All-Ireland final and take Kerry's performance last Saturday night in Tralee, was the kickouts and was the fact that there was 2 different goalies. The big advantage that Shane Ryan has as a goalkeeper in the modern game is that Shane can kick with right and left. So there are the options of variety. Shane Murphy last Saturday night in Tralee basically kicked every kick out to the same spot. And at the end of the day, even the 3 blind men of Alabama would have figured out where it was going to go. But I can see why McGeeney is frustrated, because he's probably lost 2 games that he should have won. He said, obviously, they should have beaten Galway. And like, their performance, okay, they didn't turn up in the first 25 minutes. They were, like I said, 13 points behind after 25 minutes, and they had the chances to win it. And, you know, we were critical of them a couple of weeks ago, of the 8 punched pints that they had against Galway. And I was sort of thinking their reaction last week. I remember there was a friend of mine, he failed the driving test because, as the instructor said, you weren't using your wing mirrors enough, right? And the second day he did the test, he failed it for overusing the wing mirrors. So he mustn't have been looking out the windscreen at all. And there was an element of that in our mass performance, because people say, we don't listen to the critics, or we don't give a shite what fucking these guys on the podcast or whatever is saying. But they do, they do, because the bottom line is, we're not making things. We're not Hans Christian Andersen dealing in fairy tales. We're dealing in facts. And we pointed out, rightly so, that against Galway, Armagh had, at least in those 8 punch points, there was opportunities for 3 goals. Now, last weekend, in fairness, I think they had either 1 or 2 punch points. But it was very noticeable at the end of the game, when they actually could have taken punch points, and the gas part about it was, if they took the punch points, they'd have actually won the game. But I remember on one particular occasion, and they did punch the ball across the square, and it was to Oisin O'Neill, but the pass was a bit off. But they were at least going for it. But like, we talk about, I mentioned Donny Buckley as a coach, and a brilliant coach. And Donny Buckley's advice is always, if in doubt, come in from a narrow angle, go to the far post with a punch pass. And there was 2 classic examples last week. One was Tyrone, who went to the far post for Matty Donnelly, a lovely goal. And the other was Jack Duggan of Roscommon, again coming in from the side. He could have punched the ball over the bar, punched the ball across the square, and young Carey got a goal. So at least
Craig Kennedy's goal for Tyrone was worked through the hands too. I think, wasn't it, at the start? They did. They worked it in. Yes.
So I'm delighted that McGeeney and the players and management are listening to us. That we have a bit of constructive criticism, and they're taking it on board. And you know who's taking everything on board? Fair play to him. And I have to admit, and even though he was having a pop at us all, but like, if any team has learned from the mistakes of the past, it's Donegal, because. There's no doubt about it. I know we're straying, but their performance in the first half last Sunday against Mayo was the best 35 minutes I've seen from any team in the league. Like, they played against the wind. It was a masterclass in game management. Their possession stats were 71%. But everything that they didn't do in last year's All-Ireland, they were doing this year. Pressing up on the kick-out, pressing up on the opposition. Geez, Mayo's first shot at goal with a strong win behind them was after 10 minutes. Their first point from play was after 25 minutes. But it was a masterclass in game management, in pressing. It was excellent. So Donegal papers, please copy.
Yeah, just before we move away from Roscommon Armagh, Dick, would have to give Mark Dowd his flowers as well. Like, Jesus, they could have 6 points at the start of this league had it not been for, a hop of a ball. They're probably the wrong way against Kerry the first day. And I know they nearly blew a lead the last day, but just what a massive win on home soil. We would have had them in Monaghan. There's no point in saying any different as the favourites to go down, and Monaghan are still favourites, but Roscommon have given themselves a great chance. Just need to pick up 2-3 points maybe from here on in. They have a great chance of staying up.
Yeah, what Roscommon have, in the likes of Enda Smith, Jim Murtagh, the Craigs, they always were in the old games. They were long range kickers, and that now has got a serious premium in the new game, and that will always keep you competitive when you've got guys that can score and score from distance, and it plays out over the course of a game. And on top of that, they've got really good, solid, good solid pros, you might call it, in the soccer game, the Dailies, these guys that you're going to guarantee that you're going to get a solid return. Now, you throw that into the Hyde on a wet, windy day, it's not an easy place to go for opposition. So, they've had 2 teams go up there and fallen on their sword. So they like playing up there. It's a tough place to go. They've got the points on the board that they needed to, and they've more to come. Like the Bridges boys to come back in. So listen, I think they're. Roscommon have been here before. Roscommon have always had a sort of a group of players that were ferociously competitive, always competitive in Connacht, but for some reason, when the pace quickened in Croke Park in summer, they didn't show the same level, and that's where they're going to need to try and find. There's no question that they've done enough now to probably stay up. I think they'll get enough points. They'll get another point or two, which should be enough, especially having beaten Monaghan. I'd fancy them to beat, based on what I've seen against of Dublin on Saturday night, I fancy them to beat Dublin again in the Hyde. It's going to be a real tough one, and that will keep them up. But it's whether they can quicken their step. Sometimes I find that they can't step up in pace when they get to Croke Park, and that's why they've never got to maybe a semi-final or a final, because they've been as good as an Armagh, a Monaghan, a lot of other teams that have got there when you're comparing league standards. But listen, huge credit to them, and they've been good to watch. And the boys like Enda Smith and these guys have got a bit of a boost from the new rules, because he was probably a player a lot of miles on the clock. Even Jim Murtagh, there's a chance that they could have fallen away. It's
double teamed most days and demoralised.
Yes, so it's almost as if they've got energized by the new rules and they're getting a bounce from them, when you might have thought that, God, we're going to have to find replacements for these guys, whereas absolutely not. They're relishing it.
I'll stick.
I have to just agree with Dick, and Roscommon have been a revelation. Like you said, without the same Bridges guys, you'd have said, they're certainties for relegation. Their attacking play, like Murtagh, Darragh Craig and Enda Smith. Last week, I think it was 215 between them. Absolutely superb. They're the highest scorers in all 4 divisions, which is some going. And like I said, because of the confusion around the Hooter and the controversy around the Hooter down in Killarney, it probably cost them a brilliant victory over Kerry. Actually, while we're on it, the Hooter, and there was 2 incidents again last week, and I'm a critic of the new system. I saw nothing wrong with the old system last year with the Hooter, which allowed a certain amount of jeopardy and excitement to go into game if teams were prepared to go for it with them. But I saw there was 2 instances last week. A Galway against Kerry. Kerry kicked a wide. There was still time on the clock. And when Galway got the kick out away, on the old system, you'd have had the game to continue on. Think of the excitement down in Tralee as Galway tried to get a winning score, or Kerry tried to get a turnover to get the winning score. Instead, the ball went wide, the Hooter went, and the game finished in a damp squib. And similarly in the Hyde on Sunday, if you can remember, with something like 50 seconds, there was about 50 seconds, there was less than a minute anyway, to play. The ball went out of play. Maybe it might have been 30-something seconds. The ball went out of play. But the Roscommon goalie delayed getting the ball. until such time as that when he took the kick out, the Hooter went. And I think of the old system, if the Hooter went after, Armagh were 3 points down. Think of Armagh going after that kick out, trying to win the kick out and trying to engineer a goal to secure a draw. I still think they should go back to the old system. There was nothing wrong with it. They panicked because Donegal sat back and left David Clifford after 2 minutes plus kick a brilliant point. I don't know. I think it needs to be readdressed.
I think we've robbed ourselves of potential like grandstand finishes, and like the most dramatic part of the game being even more dramatic.
Yeah, and on that, maybe segue into Saturday night. I think that's where you'll go into next, Mike. And I never got a chance to check up the rule book, but on I don't know if you've seen it, not in the Monaghan Dublin game, but in the Meath Louth game. So that game finished. So huge drama. Great excitement, great to watch. But Meath went ahead by a point.
Yeah.
Big Jack, the now cult hero, Jack Flynn from Meath, landed it. Ball went down the pitch. Obviously, everybody knew at the countdown and the clock what was left. There was 10 seconds left. But a Meath player, I can't just remember who it was, he basically purposely dragged down a Louth player.
Yeah.
And next thing, but the clock's still going. Yeah. And there was no ball wasn't brought forward. The clock ran out. Hooter went. And everybody was a wee bit, surely the game can't end like that. Surely with all the rule changes that it now can't be cynically ended for the last minute or 30 seconds.
They did that the same day against Derry. They did the exact same type of stuff. Yeah.
Because there's actually nothing to stop a team doing that repeatedly for the last minute or 30 seconds because the ball's only brought up, correct me, if they actually impede the restart. But they could constantly start dragging guys down, which is a bit of a worrying trend. I would have thought that's not a good way to end the game because everyone was sort of, all the Louth players thought, surely that can't be allowed. Surely with all the new, but actually it can. Technically,
you're right.
The referee was right.
We've got rid of the jeopardy and excitement that the old rules, and we've introduced a damn flat ending and an opportunity for cynicism or cynical play and a team to be rewarded for cynical play. So I think it just needs to be readdressed. I think it's wrong.
Yeah,
just a bit of an anomaly there. Yeah, it unintended consequences, as we've talked about repeatedly.
There's several of them. Lads, we're just going to take a quick break, but just before we go to the break, all our viewers and listeners, you can let us know your thoughts or firing questions to Indo GAA podcast at independent.ie, and obviously our GAA podcast coverage is sponsored by AIB.